where they carry the trauma, the things that they see at home, the things that they see in their neighborhoods, the things that are thrust upon them on a daily basis. And so, as a
Hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries with Tanya E. Today, I have a special guest that's joining us today, Coach Ed Bradley. Hey, Coach Ed, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Awesome.
How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your insight with my audience today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, before we begin, I have got to introduce you to everybody. For those of you that have not yet had the opportunity to meet him, Coach Bradley is the co-founder of Powerful Minds Counseling, a transitional life coach, motivational speaker, and educational consultant based in Gulfport, Mississippi. He is known for his direct yet encouraging style. He blends coaching, counseling, and engaging public speaking to inspire action and self-belief. His mission is simple: empower individuals through education, self-awareness, and strategic steps towards their best future. Coach Ed, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
What I try to do for my clients is to help them with transition into life. Try to help them, whether it's high school students as they go into adulthood and navigate that whole step into the real world, as we say. Navigate into career and life changes, or an adult as they navigate into their changes into life with accountability and encouragement and structure. We try to do everything we can to encourage them every step of the way. That's all I'm here for.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So let's talk about a little bit more. How have you reset?
Our reset. Well, my reset basically came as I was a high school teacher and basketball coach. I loved everything I did. Every day that I got up and went to work was really not work for me. What I did for a living was just, I enjoyed every day of life. But what I realized was that I was pouring into others and not really pouring into myself. Especially after COVID, I realized that there was a time where I was becoming burned out myself. And so I think one day, one of my students kind of asked me, kind of what was my plan for the future. I spent so much time talking to young people about their own futures and realized that, I kind of had started going through the motions, and just kind of realized it was time for me to take a step back and make some changes for my own life. So I shifted from coaching sports and being in a classroom every day to basically doing the same thing I was doing then. It's just I'm not in a classroom. But really, I was pouring from an empty cup. Anyone who knows anything about education knows that you spend so much time beyond just teaching a lesson, beyond just teaching from a textbook, talking to kids and developing relationships, and doing so much when it comes to building those relationships with kids, that it got to the point where, I was burned out. And as much as I loved my job, as much as I loved the people that I worked with, as much as I loved the kids that I was serving, my job wasn't serving me. And so it was time to make a change. And I knew I didn't want to completely get away from helping people. I didn't want to get away from helping kids. So this was a natural transition to going into a career that allows me to help people to become their better selves, to become their authentic selves. I think me kind of making my own transition into becoming a different kind of coach, because I'm still Coach Ed. I was a basketball coach and teacher, and I'm still a coach, and in many ways still a teacher. I'm just, instead of teaching history and sociology and psychology, I'm teaching people how to become themselves, becoming
I like
their
that.
authentic selves.
That part.
So, yes.
So
So,
let's do this. I want to have an expanded conversation about that because in our current environment,
mhm,
these babies got a lot going on and they
they
need
do.
teachers to have a heart to support and serve them. But if you're
Mhm,
pouring from an empty cup,
yes.
how is it that you are able to still give them what they need and deal with a lot of the emotional elements? Because I have seen some of the stories and the chaos that's happening around the world where kids are fighting all the time. And a lot of that is
Mhm,
just emotional wounds because they don't know
mhm,
how to deal with them. And they grow up to be adults that don't know how
yes.
to deal with it either. Can you expand a little
Yes.
bit more about what you did to support some teachers that are out there now that are maybe where
Mhm,
you were? They're pouring, they want to give, they want to support, they want to serve, but they are burnt out.
yes. So I think the biggest thing for me, and I think any educator out there, I think the first thing you have to understand is when you deal with students with behavioral issues or just students in general, understand that a lot of the things that you witness in the classroom, you cannot take them personal. Understand when a student walks into your school, walks into a classroom, they walk in there with two backpacks. One backpack is full of all the things for school, if they're fortunate, because when you consider the economic issues that these kids face, they may not have everything they need financially. But in that backpack are textbooks, notebooks, pencils, papers, that kind of stuff. But the second backpack is the one we don't see. That backpack is where they carry all the mental, physical trauma that they deal with that you don't see when they won't come through the school doors. And they carry that backpack everywhere they go. Unfortunately, they can't take that one off. That backpack is what causes them to behave in the manner in which they behave. That backpack is the one where they pick up the behaviors, where they carry the trauma, the things that they see at home, the things that they see in their neighborhoods, the things that are thrust upon them on a daily basis. And so, as an educator, as a teacher, you have to understand that many times when they are acting out, when they are behaving the way they behave, and sometimes it's going to be directed at you, that it is not always personal. It's not about you. It's about them lashing out at their situation. And once you get past that and start having an understanding and developing a stronger relationship with that individual student, you're able to move past those things. I can tell you one particular story from my own personal experience. I was coaching on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. One of my assistant coaches came to me one day and he commented about a young man. We had a basketball player who he had this tendency when he got frustrated to just completely explode and lash out at everyone around him. Right. And usually, because I have a tendency to be a hothead myself, I'd explode and get on everybody and run the whole team, that kind of stuff. But with him, I wouldn't do that. He would lash out. And I'd stop practice. I'd pull him to the side. I'd send him to the locker room, tell him go home, come back tomorrow. We'll talk about it. Well, my assistant coach one day asked me, "It's like, Coach, how come you don't get on him like you do the rest of them?" I said, "Well, Coach, have you ever seen what his home life is like? Have you ever really seen? You've taken him home? Have you ever really talked to his parents? Have you ever seen what he goes home to?" And my assistant was like, "Well, no, I never really realized." I was like, "Well, if you saw what he dealt with on a regular basis, you'd understand why he pop off like he does."
That
So when
part.
other players are doing right, when other players are doing these things, they're doing it because they want to be disruptive. When he's doing this, it's a cry for help. So I can't penalize him when he's asking for help. We have to find a different way to reach him.
And
So,
that's the piece with heart centered souls like yourself that want to make certain that you pour into the students that you have, but you've got to know them. Too many
right.
times we're in environments because a lot of teachers have to just get the curriculum done or meet
Mhm,
whatever it is, or some just so
mhm,
burnt out. I'm just going to follow the lesson plan and I'm getting my
mhm.
paycheck and I'm going home. But those
Exactly.
babies,
Mhm.
we forget that when they're little and they enter into the world, the way that
Right.
they express themselves is to cry out.
Right.
That doesn't change. And if they
Mhm.
don't get the tools that they need, or teachers like yourself that can recognize that individual outside of the massive group, they'll grow up to be adults that still cry out. Let's pivot a little bit with the conversation with where you are now, because that student that asks you, what
Mhm.
are you going to do next? How did
Right.
you decide? What are you going to do next?
Right. Well, so it kind of goes to those conversations that I had in the classroom or in the gym with those same students because many times I would have conversations with people with students who were juniors or seniors as they were preparing for graduation and start asking, okay, so what's next? Look, coach, I got an A in science, I got a B in this, and I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to USM, or I'm going to Alabama, or whatever the case. And I said, yeah, well, okay, but then what's next? Well, I'm gonna get a degree in this, but what's next? Well, I don't really know. So what I realized was, and I've used this quote several times because I've had several conversations about education in general, but teachers are blamed for breaking a system that they didn't create. Okay. And the reason I say that is this: we have created a system that's based on standardized testing where we are herding students in one direction without getting to know individual students and creating plans that is best suited for those individuals. All kids are not going to be successful under the same plan. Standardized testing is not measuring everyone's success, and it is not pushing them all to be successful long term. Okay. And unfortunately, the teachers are being asked to teach and prepare students in the same way, but we're asking them to have success for individuals while using the same system for all of them. And it's just not possible. You cannot, it's that well, square peg in the round hole situation. We're asking the teacher to take all these square pegs and shove them all into these round holes. And then we're blaming them when we can't get the square pegs to go into the round hole. And what I've realized with talking to those students was because from the time they were in elementary school all the way until they were now juniors or seniors, they've been taught a certain way. They've been given a certain curriculum because we were forced to do that. As educators, we knew this is not the most efficient. This is not the best way to teach our kids. But this is what the state and the federal government and everyone around us have told us what we have to do. But we know ultimately this is not what's best for our kids, right? But we're doing it because this is what we have to do, right? But when I'm having conversations with these students, I'm realizing these kids have no real plan. They have no idea.
And it's because of how they're taught. The thing that, for me, I am one of those square pegs that everybody
Mm-hmm.
try to fit inside this round
Mm-hmm.
hole because I'm now, the new term that I have been told about the elements of my being is that I have so many neurodivergent elements. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
neurodivergent? Well,
Right.
I have dyslexia, which is now a thing that is okay to say. But I
Mm-hmm.
was a child who went to school in the 80s. That was not something that you said, because if you had any of those elements, they took every student that they could not figure out how to put inside of that round peg and
Mm-hmm.
put them in what they call special education, which was a
Right.
black hole where
Mm-hmm.
nothing took place.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
was something that my grandmother always told me, well, don't tell people this. The thing I also learned is that, and now there's been several things that's identified, because people forget those kids grow up. I
Mm-hmm.
also had some social constructs that I did not know how to manage well. So my behavior, like sounds like the
Mm-hmm.
student that you had, I acted out because I couldn't figure out the words. I didn't know how to identify because I didn't know what was going on with me. No one took the time to figure out what was going on with me until my grandmother became my best advocate. And she sent me
Mm-hmm.
to a separate school. And I have, which is probably for you, for a lot of students, you are Coach Ed. When you did all the various things that you were teaching, for me,
Mm-hmm.
it was Miss Anderson. Miss
Right.
Anderson took the time to help me put to words what was happening with me, give me insight about how to navigate the world. I still see the world different because, as one individual that's dyslexic, I'm dyslexic
Mm-hmm.
in numbers, I'm dyslexic in letters,
Right.
I'm also spatial dyslexia, on top of the fact that now, growing up as an adult, when you tell somebody and you have your job that gives you your reasonable accommodations, I had to go through getting all of that together, but they test you all over again because they only test kids for these learning disabilities, not paying
Mhm.
attention that adults grow up and we
Right.
still contain these learning
Right.
disabilities.
Exactly. Exactly.
How do you help
Yeah.
adults that find themselves in that space and never got the opportunity? Because I was lucky. I had a
Mhm.
heart centered soul just like you to support me, but a lot of
Right.
people are not lucky.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I honestly I try to use the same approach uh now that I used then in the classroom. My first step is try to get to know you as an individual. Let's have a real conversation about you as an individual to understand what your plans are. What is it that you enjoy? What are some things that you do well? Let's see how those things fit and how they can lead you in your future. What are some things that you can do well? What are some things that you struggle with? Let's look at those things. Let's talk about some things that you have accomplished in your past. Let's look at all of these things fit together. What One of the things that, and I had this conversation with someone before. There was a news story several months ago about I think it was like a Burger King employee. Like somebody recorded this lady who, like, she went in to work her shift, right? And she was the only person that showed up for work that day. And she ended up running the whole shift by herself. Like for 8 hours, she was in the Burger King by herself. She took the orders, she made the food, she did the whole thing by herself, the whole day, right? And somebody recorded her like running a whole busy restaurant by herself. And so what I would say then is, so if she came to me and we were talking about her career, what she did that one day shows that she's more than just a Burger King employee. She shows management material because she ran a whole restaurant by herself. She can multitask because she did everything all in one day by herself, whether you realize it or not. Those are amazing skills that you just showed, that you could do everything all by yourself in one day. The fact that you were able to take money and run the register while preparing food, taking orders, all those things in one day. Like you completely ran a whole restaurant by yourself in one day. Those are skills that most people on the surface wouldn't consider. But you literally just showed that you are management material. So we should be putting that down on your resume, right? Because you just ran the whole restaurant. So there are skills, there are hidden skills that people possess that they don't realize they possess. But when we sit down and we have discussions about individuals. And like you said, there are a lot of people who are adults now that went through things as kids and they were not given the proper direction. They did not have that person advocating for them. So we're going to have those discussions and we're going to start identifying those skills that people did not properly identify when they were kids. And we're going to find ways to use those skills to your advantage now as an adult. We're going to find ways to enhance those skills and identify and shine a spotlight on them. Because my first thing we're going to do is applaud you because you took that first step. Your
That
first step was showing up.
And for
You
some
showed up.
individuals, the applaud is what we need because, especially for those that are heart centered souls, we support, we give, we try.
Hmm.
But I often share with my clients, you had everything you needed from the very beginning. That
Right.
sits to your core values, that sits to the elements of your piece. That woman, oh, she had integrity to show up
Right.
because there was
Exactly.
probably some people that recognized they should have been there, but they didn't. She was
Hmm.
also trustworthy. And
Right.
because she was trustworthy, she wanted to make certain that her name, when her name is stated, it's
Hmm.
stated with something according to excellence. And she did the best she could.
Right.
We often are in spaces where we're doing the best we can. But if we don't feel appreciated, if you don't already have that as a core value sitting in the midst of your
Hmm.
soul, you will not participate in what's happening in the craziness that is existing in our world today. Let's talk about it a little bit more because in sharing what you just shared, you create a supportive space for individuals to be able to do this. You want to expand a little bit more on the space that you hold so that individuals that find themselves, I'm an adult, I recognize these things, but Can you walk them through how they can get some more assistance? The role that you once played, whether it was a spouse, a professional, or full-time parent, that shaped your identity. But now, everything's changed. And with that change comes uncertainty. What if this is your opportunity to redefine you, rediscover a newer version of yourself that's built for this moment in time? This is your chance to create that reset moment, the identity that aligns with who you really are and not just who the world expects you to be.
Number one, I'm just going to start by saying, whether it's with me or anyone else, the first thing you do is take that step. Let's start there. If you want to come work with me, I am more than happy to work with you, because God knows I'm kind of just getting started. I've spent the last couple of years kind of working towards developing and preparing this. Even though I retired a few years ago, went back and started preparing, figuring out how to make my own transition myself personally, to go from Coach Bradley, the basketball coach and teacher, to now Coach Ed, the transitional life coach. And my website now is coachedbradley.com. And I mean, all that stuff's going to be listed here. But just to those who are looking for help, the first thing I will tell you is go out. There's plenty of help out there for you. So take that first step. Let's start there. Just take the first step, whether it's with me or anyone else. Let's start there. The second thing I would say is that you're going to have stumbles, but that's okay. Let's understand that stumbles and mistakes are experience. But let's reframe those mistakes into experience. Don't call them mistakes. Don't call them stumbles. They're just experience. Experience is what leads us to success. We can't have success without those mistakes. Nobody's going to be successful the first go round. I mean, even like the most perfect person to walk this earth. At the end of the day, you saw what we did with him. Unfortunately, we nailed him to a cross, right? So. Be honest. So there's nothing we do in life is going to be perfect. So be prepared that there's going to be mistakes, but those mistakes are there for a reason. They are there to help you so that when you get where you're going, you know what it takes to stay there. This is all about preparing you for being who you're supposed to be to begin with. So my job, if you come to me or if you find someone else, because at the end of the day, I'm all about helping people. And if I'm not the right person, someone else out there is for you. There's someone else out there who is. But my job is to help you craft a plan that works for you as an individual. I'm not going to try and take that square peg and try and get it in a round hole. We're going to figure out a way to find the square hole for you, right? And we're going to come up with a plan that works just for you. So our first step is to finding out what that plan is, and we're going to do that together. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to get to know who you are as an individual. We're going to have a discussion about what you are most comfortable with, what your ideal future looks like, and how do we make that a reality. And the thing about it is, when we have that discussion, what your ideal future looks like, a few months down the road, you may realize what I thought was my ideal future is not necessarily my ideal future, and that's okay. That's where those stumbles come into play. That's where that experience comes into play, and then we'll make another plan, and we'll make as many plans as it takes until we get where we need to be, and you end up the person that you're supposed to be.
I'm so glad you said that, because too many times people are under the impression that they've got to create this perfect plan. And some individuals stay stuck on fixing the plan, never implementing it. So their world never changes. And then they are back where they were in the beginning, and then they feel nothing's working. So I thank you so much for sharing that and giving people permission to change what's necessary in order for you to be able to be supported. I appreciate that. Yes. Here's the thing that I also want to expand just a little bit more, because we're going to get ready to wrap this up. You were sharing the opportunity for individuals to have a clarification call with you. It's
Hmm.
part of the free gift that you're giving. Can you tell us a
Yes.
little bit more about something people should bring to the table so that they can get the ball running? Because the gift, I'm grateful that you're giving it. But
Hmm.
since this is more of unpacking what's needed, can you give them a little more of an idea so that they can answer the call? So you guys look at the link that's below. All of this is going to be in the description. When you reach out to Coach Ed, be ready so that you can maximize the time that he will provide for you. Please share.
Yeah. So when you set up your call, the biggest thing I will need from you is to just be prepared to share information about number one, what you want to get from me as as your transitional life coach. What does your plan look like? What do you want from me? What are we trying to accomplish? Right. So are we changing our are we looking to make a career change? Are we changing things within our personal life? What are we working on? Let's start there, right? Then let's be prepared, be willing to share some things about you personally, be able to open up, understand whatever we talk about between you and I. Okay. I mean, I'm not trying to, share this. I don't know anybody in your personal life. So it's not like I'm going to go tell your grandma or somebody like that. So it's between us, but be able to be open and honest with me because I'm going to be open and honest with you. Be willing to be open to honest communication, from you to me and from me to you about what steps need to be taken so that we can move forward. Because at the end of the day, as I said before, my job is to help you to become your authentic self. My job is to help you to achieve your goals. So it's okay to come to me. And if you're not 100% what those goals are, it's okay for us to have a discussion about who you are as a person so we can figure out and work our way towards that. So really, I guess the biggest thing I need you to have is just to be willing to have an open, honest conversation more than anything.
Thank you so much for that. And for those of you, you're going to get the information down below, but go to his website, coachedbradley.com. Coach, thank you so much for this conversation. I appreciate all that you have poured and the heart that you have to serve because too many of us, we need to have that. And we don't get enough of it when we're in high school and to grow up to be adults to still find ourselves in some positions. Yeah, thank you for giving us support to
Thank you.
transition. Are there any
Thank you.
final thoughts that you want to leave with our audience today?
All I can say is that for me personally, I'll just share something personal that for me as Coach Bradley or Coach Ed Bradley, for my former students and who are now, some of them are adults, are like, in their 20s, some even in their 30s. This gray hair kind of gives it away that I'm getting older. Uh, Once I'm coach, I'm always coach. And I recently actually had a conversation with a student of mine who's now in her 30s. Recently had a loss, in her late 20s, excuse me. She'll kill me for that. But who recently had a loss in her family. So I reached out just to tell her that I'm here for her, that even though I haven't actually been coached to her in years, that I'm still coached. And I think it's important that everyone understands that those of us who got into the business of education for the right reasons, we're always going to be here for our former students. And even now as a transitional life coach, those of you that I work with, if there are things I can do to help, that's my job, but that's also my calling. I'm here to help people. And if there's any way I can help someone, that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you for that. And so for today, if anything that you've heard resonates with you, then it's time to like, comment, and share this information with others. But before we leave, I want to leave you with a next level note. And for those of you that are mindful of my next level notes, you already know what's coming. For those of you that are just getting introduced to my next level notes, well, these are some principles and concepts that I've learned along the way. And having gone through this conversation with Coach Ed Bradley, I'm reminded of a story of a gentleman. He was born inside of an environment that was less than appealing. His family was poor. They were in a space that did not support his growth. His mother couldn't keep him, so she ended up sending him away. And he got adopted by a woman that had a little bit of clout to her. She was the head of a corporation. And when she took him under her wings, she taught him all the best things. He got great education, but there was still some flaws that he had in his being that made him feel some type of way sometimes because he often stuttered. And then with the mindfulness that he had to be able to share some messages, if you have a disability that does not support what you know is your gifting, that does not support moving you into a direction that you think will help others, it does something to you. So he internalized his flaws, and one day it came out in anger. And in his anger, he ended up killing somebody. Now, because of that, he recognized that the law was coming for him, so he fled. In his fleeing, he hid out for a long time. And when you put yourself in a position where you're no longer exercising your gifts, your skills, your talents, even you have a tendency to believe that it no longer exists. Well, while he was walking through his past exile, all the people that were looking for him, they were no longer around. And his brother came to go find him and share with him, we're still having issues with our family. We still need a leader, and you are still a leader. Can you please come and help us along the way? But because he still had his flaws, being self-conscious of his neurodivergent elements, he didn't trust himself. It is in those moments that you'll need to rely on somebody other than yourself to give you the strength and the insight to move into a better direction. For those of you that are listening to this episode today, Coach Ed Bradley can be that support. For those of you that are mindful of the next level note principle that I'm discussing, well, elements of that is from the story of Moses. And Moses had God support him on the journey to give him insight that, yes, you have flaws, but I made you with flaws to let you be reminded that as you walk through this journey, there will always be something that is broken. But no matter what is broken in your world, you are still built for this. You are still built for an environment where you can pour out what's been poured into you. And if you find that you're in a situation where you have some neurodivergent elements to your being and you're unsure about how to allow yourself to be poured into the earth, let Jesus join you on the journey and find some support for individuals that he has given in this world to give you that help along the way. And I encourage you to reach out to Coach Ed Bradley as well as one of those individuals that can help you along the way. Coach, is there anything you want to add to some of the insight that I've shared today?
I think that's great. I love that the insight of the story of how he allowed, his disabilities, his doubt in himself to take away from who he really was as a leader. That had he leaned into his strengths as opposed to worrying about his disabilities, he could have overcome those disabilities. And so many of us will do that we forget all of the goodness of ourselves because of one flaw, when in reality, we all have flaws.
That
You
part.
know, it's just a matter of how we see ourselves, that there's so much good in us that outweighs our flaws, that if we just lean into what's good, we can far outweigh our flaws. And there's so many of your listeners out there that I think could really do themselves some justice if they just recognize all the good in themselves and just move past those flaws, because we all have them, no matter who we are.
And that's
You
the
know.
part that this is a great discussion. So thank you for reminding us that even if we find ourselves in a position where our flaws, it look like it's personal to us, you can
Mhm.
maximize and make transitions to support you professionally as well. So that
Yes.
was a great reminder for me as I was remembering. Hey, this was reminding me of a little bit of things. But thank you
Mhm.
again for sharing and supporting our audience today.
Thank you.
So if you're looking for some extra support along the way, you can also feel free to go to my website, tanyaehood.com. There you can click under the Work With Me tab and see the various ways that we can work with one another. In the meantime, this is Tanya E. Hood, walking in my purpose, and I want you to do the same.